Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Skyberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are happy to be here today with Academic Answers. Kolbie Kiefer, did I say that correctly?
You did.
Today, we're going to be talking about understanding the therapeutic boarding school options and kind of some other things surrounding some of the challenges that maybe some of our loved ones have with some of the mental things. And I just want to say that, if you're joining us for the first time, we're glad you're here. If you're, coming back and you've attended a lot of our webinars, I'm definitely glad that you're back. And that this topic is very near and dear to my heart. And as a parent, if you have a loved one that is going through this, the struggle is real. It is real. The state of the U.S. as it relates to care for mental health is difficult at best. And if you're dealing with this at home, it is difficult at best. And not to mention, it's just not widely talked about because there's just a lot of issues. So I'm really excited to be having this topic today. This is not something that we've ever talked about before, and it is truly near and dear to my heart. I've definitely walked in these shoes and been there and done that, and it is really, really, really tough. So we're going to just kind of go deeper and wider in this topic, and I always kind of go through the housekeeping. We're in webinar mode today, so we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. We do invite you to put your questions in the chat box. If you want your questions to be private, you can put it to the host and panelists, and your questions will be private. We'll read them out. We're never going to call out anybody's name of what the questions are. It's just so you know, for privacy purposes. And everybody that has registered for today's webinar is going to get a copy of these slides and our contact information and Kolbie's contact information as well. Consolidated Planning Group, we're a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We do a lot of advocacy. If you've joined before, we do a lot of webinars. They're always free. They always live on our Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel after the fact. In fact, there's over 200 webinars out there on topics planning and relating to special needs. We have over 30 years of experience, and we are an advisory and consulting firm. So people come to us because they need help. They need to know, how do I plan for the future? How do I make sure that when I'm gone or I'm no longer able to care for my loved one with a disability, how much money do I need to fund the special needs trust? How do I make sure that I have a decent and nice retirement and don't run out of money if my child needs, care for 20 or 30 years after I'm gone? So we help with all of that, and we really put some numbers in place. We put protection plans, lifetime care plans, transition planning. We help people set up ABLE accounts, and again, we do a lot of advocacy. And we always want to mention, and I'm sorry if you guys have attended before and you've heard me say it, but I promise you I will say it again and again and again. Your situation is specialized, and you do need to work with a specialist. It is so critically important that we have money in the right buckets and that we do the right things to preserve the eligibility for our loved ones for state and federally funded programs such as waivers, Medicaid waivers, SSI, various programs. And so we are specifically nuanced in that. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. And just like, you're not going to go to your primary care physician if you have a heart issue, it's the same thing when it comes to financial planning when you have a loved one with a disability. So today, without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Kolbie, and so she can kind of talk to you about the lay of the land as it relates to therapeutic boarding school. We also know that there's some people on here that may have kids that are over age 18, and we might be thinking of other options outside of that. So she'll hit on some of those things as well. So thank you so much, Kolbie, for being here. And just as a reminder, everyone, if and when you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. If you want them to be private, just send it to the host and panelists. If you don't care if everybody sees your question, that you can send it to everyone, and I'll be monitoring the chat box for Kolbie.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm hoping I will keep myself organized because I get very impassioned about what I do and really love what I do. So again, I'm Kolbie Kiefer. I am the partner and lead therapeutic educational consultant with Academic Answers. I'm out of the Austin, Texas office, but I work with families nationwide. I want to start just this much on me because I think it is relevant. I've been with this firm for 7.5 out of the last 9 years. Started kind of more on the business side of things, but then really shifted into relevant work and clinical experience. So I left to go finish my master's degree. It is in professional counseling with an emphasis in marriage, family, and couples therapy. So what that means is I really look at a child and their family as a whole system, and that everybody is in this together. And what I found in doing therapy, that degree makes me as a therapist, what I found is that it was really hard to help families come up with solutions, help them make progress forward. And so that's really why I shifted into a consulting role, is so I can come up with solutions, I can be in the trenches with you, and I can really help families navigate mental health, behavioral health, and just academic in general. I also want to say, and then I'm going to jump into this slide, is I'm a parent as well. And I think that might be, and my little one is still little, so I'm a newer-ish parent, but there is just something that changes when you are a parent. And so I think that is a credential in and of itself. One other thing.
Kolbie, one of the things that I really wanted to say is, like, I think, there are a lot of support groups out there on Facebook for parents with kids with mental illness and other things like that. But one of the things that I think a lot of parents feel, and guys, I'm just speaking honestly and from the heart, my own personal experience. This is really, really hard. And when you have a child that is seriously struggling, like seriously, we have, suicidal ideation, self-harm, they're all the alphabet soup of all of the diagnoses and comorbid conditions. It's really, really hard. But when we talk about the way of the state of the way things are, there's just not a lot of help out there. There's not a lot of help navigating. There are some really, really bad places out there that as parents that we really need to avoid. And so I am just so super excited to have you here with us to kind of talk through that, because, if when I throw out acronyms like PHP or IOP and those things ring a bell with you, if right? Yeah. Or if you've had an admission to a mental hospital and it's kind of like this 72-hour hold, and then they turn them loose and they have all these suggestions of what you should do, except for there's no openings anywhere, or they don't have any suggestions of where you should do these things, or these things are $100,000 a year, or, those things like that. So we're really here to be talking about some of the options out there and how you can truly get help. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. I'm so glad you did. And, it's hard enough being a parent in general, and then adding a mental health concern, a learning difference, anything else. I mean, there's no workbook, there's no class, there's no guideline for any of this. And so really having people who understand this and can give you unbiased opinions to help you make educated decisions is just so crucial. So we're going to talk about the therapeutic boarding school options, and you saw me do like quotes around that. To me, that's a really generic term. And oftentimes we think of, adolescents needing this option, but, it can mean a ton of different things in my book. It can be residential treatment. It can be a therapeutic boarding school. It can be an assessment and stabilization program. It could be outdoor therapy. It could be a lot of different things, but kind of the three things that I think encompass that is that there's access to academics, there's access to therapy, whatever that might be, or whatever level that might be, and you live there, you're out of the home. And so that's kind of this all-encompassing thing. And so for me, I really want to cover the who, what, why, when, where of this, and where do you come to this conclusion that your child, you might consider a therapeutic boarding option. So really, who is this presentation for? Who are we talking about? What's going on with your child? What are their needs? When is it time to consider an out-of-home placement, and when is it time to maybe consider a therapeutic and educational consultant? Where do you go to find solutions? Where the heck does your loved one go? As you were talking about, there's so many places out there, and it's so isolating, and there's bad programs and good programs. And then how do you put a plan together? And why would you consider a therapeutic and educational consultant to help guide you? So really want to try and cover all of that in a general overview, more of an introduction. But if you guys have any questions as I'm navigating, shoot them in, or we can save them for the end. It doesn't matter to me. All right. You can go to the next slide. So I want to start with, who are we talking about? And I think we all can guess this, but we're talking about your child, your loved one, if you're a grandparent or a legal guardian, any child who is not reaching their potential. I'm going to get into what that means here in just a second, but anyone not reaching their potential. And typically we think of the adolescent or young adult years, and for the bulk of that are, students who are 11, 12, all the way up into those young adult years, I say around 25. But, I've worked with a family who had a 5-year-old, and I've also worked with a family whose child was 48 years old. And so it really could be across the lifespan. Again, this child, your child, is not reaching their potential. All right. So that leads me to how do we evaluate or what's really going on with your child? And I think that's a really nice place to start. And that starts with you, the parent, in evaluating how your child is doing. And in my mind, and kind of how I operate is evaluating your child from the 5 areas of wellness. I think that can really be a good way to really see where your child is functioning. How are they doing? So the 5 areas: physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual. Physical, to me, this means, how are they doing medically? Are they eating right? Are they sleeping right? Are they on the right medications? Are they able to keep their physical body safe? Are they participating in physical activity? The emotional wellness is navigating and coping when things aren't going your way. Utilizing those coping skills, being able to regulate emotions, managing symptoms of anxiety, depression, or other mental health things going on. Typically, there are usually more than one in many cases. How's your student navigating their social world? Are they making and keeping friends? When it's appropriate, how are they navigating intimate relationships? How are they doing with their teachers or the staff at school, or with family, or when you're out in the public for, let's say the grocery store or dinner at a restaurant? So that's their social world. Spiritual world, it oftentimes families are thinking religion, and that very well could be a religious or a spiritual aspect, but also for me is your student adhering or in line or aligned with your family values, how you've raised them, and the things that are important to your family as a whole? So really evaluating that they're aligned with that. And then last is that intellectual area of wellness. For our student age or school age students, that can mean their academic setting or how they're learning. For older young adults, or even adult age, it's that career or job opportunities. How are they managing their day-to-day? So really taking the time as a parent to evaluate each of those aspects and ask yourself questions like, how's my student functioning? How are they doing? Are they meeting the expectations for their age in each dimension? Are they balanced? Is one, getting more of an emphasis or requiring more support? Is there an area that they're struggling in and they are needing a bit more attention in that way? Are they needing more support? So really taking that's where I typically like parents to start. This might happen before you really are in the area of considering or wondering about out of the home placement or therapeutic boarding options, but this is really, at the core of like, let's evaluate where my student is, what's going on here. All right. So if things aren't balanced or your child is not managing, like, what does that look like? So I went with some of the bigger behaviors, the bigger things that families see that really trigger or get you to the point where you're saying, something's not working, behavioral acting out, struggle or difficulty with friends. They're in the wrong school environment and maybe they're flat refusing or they're having poor or failing grades. They're family discord or disrespect. We may even move more extreme where we're having technology or social media misuse, self-harm, suicidal ideation. All these things, you can all see them and read them, but things that may get you to the point, and this is different for each person and each family, but where do we get to that point where things aren't working? We need to consider what else is out there. And then when you're realizing, hey, something is not going right, my child is not being as successful, they're not reaching their potential, they're not in line with how we as a family operate or what we value, where do you go for solutions? I think that Allison was hitting on a really good point. You can go out to the internet, you can get stuff from friends, and it can be really overwhelming. There are good places, there are bad places. And so really being cognizant of how you get your information, I think, is really important. Knowledge is power. And so going to an expert oftentimes can help you understand what really is out there and what might be a good solution for you to consider. And I phrase it that way because in no way, and this is what I do, but I'm not a decision maker, you are. And so, oftentimes we are the information purveyors. So one of the options to go look for solutions is a therapeutic and educational consultant. The IECA, the Independent Educational Consultants Association, defines what an educational or a therapeutic and educational consultant is a skilled professional who provides counseling to help students and families choose a school, college, or other program that is a good personal match, one that will foster the child's academic and social growth. For me, I use terms like a child advocate, a private case manager, a parent advisor. I think that's really important. It's a private case manager who is doing that good personal match. Typically, a therapeutic and educational consultant is affiliated, is a member, or abides by the IECA code of ethics. So I think that's something really important. The IECA is an association, kind of our governing body, kind of gives us a code of ethics, a code of guidelines of how to operate. And so any good consultant typically is affiliated or a member of IECA and is completely independent. hence the first word of IECA, independent. So not receiving any funds or kickbacks or referral fees. I think that's something really important. Typically, it's a professional with a combination of experience and education. Some of us are clinicians like myself. Some of us have been in the school environment, and typically we have a specialization. There are consultants who specialize in traditional academic boarding schools. There are college consultants, and then like me, there are ones who are therapeutic and educational consultants who kind of focus on the therapeutic component and some of the school components.
Kolbie, you hit the nail right on the head, and I just want to reiterate this a lot, and this is the same similar thing. If you've ever had to place a parent or a grandparent or an aging person in your life, there are consultants out there that are completely independent. And so basically when you're hiring a truly independent consultant, you are really doing what is in the best interest of the child. There are free consultants out there, and they're paid by these facilities. And so they're really not looking at what's in the best interest of your loved one. They're looking at who's going to pay them the most. And to me, that was very, very important in my decision-making process. That's not what I wanted. You really, truly want a good fit for this, because it truly could make a difference on the trajectory of the life of your loved one with what they're struggling with mentally. So I thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, of course. So how do therapeutic and educational consultants help? I think it's really important. Now, I'm going to be a little bit maybe biased, because I'm going to talk about a little bit more in depth about how myself and my team works, because I'm very closely integrated into that process. But I think any consultant, any therapeutic and educational consultant should follow somewhat of a process that helps ensure that you are getting a personalized and individualized kind of plan or recommendation. So I'm going to kind of walk you a bit more specific to us, but I think for any consultant you work with, knowing and understanding what their process looks like, it will likely be similar. So the very first thing, I always like to give that disclaimer, because it gets a little bit more of an academic answer influence here, but I do think it's important. So the very first thing is that your consultant should evaluate. They should be meeting with you, the parent who knows your child better than anybody. They should be requesting documentation, relevant documentation. That could be discharge summaries, IEPs, psychological testing, grades, transcripts, anything that helps us understand kind of how your child is operating, functioning. They also should consult with the involved professionals. Most times when families come to us, they have built this team. They have a team that knows the family, that have been trying and working really diligently. And so let's use their expertise. That's so important. And last, maybe definitely not least, is we want to meet with your child. We want to meet with the student and get a sense of their personality. It's one way to get your view and perspective of your child and the professional, but there's just something really, really intangible about actually being able to meet with the child. So really gathering as much data. And that leads us to identify what is your child's needs in each of those 5 areas. And I'm going to keep referencing back to those 5 areas of wellness. What do they need? Where is their strengths? Where are things that they could work on or get more support? And through that data development, we're able to develop a child profile that highlights their strengths, their current needs, considerations and concerns, areas of growth, really a comprehensive, holistically, I keep making like this global shape with my hands, this 360 view of your child. And that helps us identify possible options for consideration. we're going to present your child to those identified options. We receive feedback, get follow-up information, really navigate those pre-admissions things. I think one thing is that we help you not have to tell your story so many times. We really take the time to get to know you, your family, the story. So we have this comprehensive understanding of what's going on and what your child needs. And that helps us obtain pre-approval for admission, right? Pre-approval. We're not filling out paperwork for you. Ethically, legally, we're not able to do that. We're not a decision maker, but we're getting that pre-approval.
Kolbie, let's talk about the kids that aren't receptive and they're not hearing. I mean, we're not here because things are going well. Things are going poorly. And the kids need to leave our house. And we have a lot of probably ODD or oppositional defiance going on. I mean, so how can we talk about that? Because I think that that's a real issue for some of the families.
I'm never going to cause a crisis for a family. I'm just not. And so I will never set us up where a child could get so escalated, so dysregulated that it's going to cause harm to anybody in the household. Now, I tend to be very honest with families or with the students that I meet with your child. And I will say, hey, you know, your parents came to me and they said things weren't really going well. And they said, you know, typically school's not going very well. And so I kind of lead as, hey, I'm trying to help you reach your goals. And here's what I do. I'm not leading with, hey, your parents are considering you going away. That's not going to be helpful. But really where I come from is, hey, I can help you reach your goals. I don't know what your goals are. And hey, did you know that this is your life? So I'd really love to hear from you what your goals are. What do you think's going well? What's not going well? What do you think you need? Some students are not interested and they are not going to engage. That's okay. I've seen it all. I've had kids run out. I've had kids do all sorts of things in my meetings with them. And that's okay. And I think that's data in and of itself. They do not have to be on their best behavior. And I'm also just going to come from a place of, I want to get to know you. And then navigate from there, because again, you don't know what you're going to do. We haven't gotten to those recommendations pieces yet. And so why say, oh, your parents are going to send you away or whatever, however you want to say it, when you really might not. You don't have enough information yet. So really coming from of, hey, things aren't going well, talk to me. Like, what are you needing? What is, you know, it can just coming from that curious place of trying to get to know them. Sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay. And that's in and of itself. I've had a 2-minute meeting before, and I've had an hour-long meeting. It just depends on your student, and however they are is just great with me. I know parents get very worried about that.
I mean, yes, there's oppositional and, confrontational, the things that the kids are going through and stuff. But, the other side of it too, which I've also seen, is that they're tired of feeling bad. Totally. They're tired of feeling the way they are. And when you have a kid that is receptive to, hey, things really aren't going well, and I don't know what to do about it, and I want to be better, so, we've definitely seen that as well.
Yeah, totally. I get it. I see it all. So when we get to the part where families are we've received pre-approval for options. I want programs and schools saying, yes, we can help. We want to help this family. We want to help this child. I'm going to present those appropriate options to you. My team is, or your consultant should be. And really what to be listening for, and what I really try and emphasize is, hey, the mission of the program is in line with what your child needs. They fit your child, not cramming your child into a box or a peg. That's not for them. We can understand the peer milieu. Who is there? What's the other students like? That's really important. Most parents are very concerned. Am I going to be with, gang banging, drug dealing, blah, blah, blah? Is my kid going to learn more? and really being able to do an evaluation of who's there and who is your child going to be interacting with. We also have the ability to influence who the assigned clinician is. They will be doing some matchmaking, but I think we can really, because of our intimate knowledge, because of our relationship with these programs and schools, they will, we can kind of influence and have some say also from you as well, some feedback from you to be able to help with that as well. From there, your consultant, my team will support you, the family, in evaluating options, implementation, the logistics, monitoring of progress. Is what's going on at this option, at the therapeutic boarding option, going according to plan as we would expect? Does your child continue to make progress? Are they where they're supposed to be? I think that's really important. And then as we support through the treatment process, we also help, and most therapeutic consultants assist and coordinate what comes next. What does discharge look like? Because it doesn't just stop. It's not like, ta-da, they're back home. There is a lot that goes into, and you've done all this work and you've paid all this money. And so how do we keep them on that positive trajectory we're on? That is maybe even more important than that initial decision. I know that sounds wild, but there's so much more that's into it.
Yeah, the follow-up is so important. One thing that Kolbie and I were talking about earlier today is the reviews, and they're all bad. So like if you find a place that has better than three stars, I don't know, you're probably doing something wrong when you're looking, but all of these places, I just want to say that you have to consider the source of where it's coming from, and also consider yourself. How often do you write awesome reviews? Or do you take and write a review when you're upset or when you're angry about something? And we also have to keep in mind that we have people with mental illness that are angry, and kids with typical teenage behaviors that are also writing reviews as well. So I think that it's not enough to look at a place and say, oh my gosh, their reviews are 3.2, they're off the list. Because a lot of those reviews are very, very skewed. And I think it's really, this is where the consultant comes in and where they have kind of a better inside track. And you mentioned that, the right placement with the right counselor. And one of the things that you mentioned is very, very real of, like you said, we have enough problems on our hands right now. We don't need them going and learning from new people more horrible things to do or to think up. And so that is that they do great right by themselves. So we don't need like negative influences. And so that is a very real thing. You might have a kid that's struggling with like an eating disorder, and then they're in there with all these people that are struggling with cocaine. I mean, so that's kind of a big difference. Right. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. When I'm guiding my families, if there's a review that is like, oh my God, I always say, bring it to me. I do a lot of work in monitoring, but I can't catch everything at every program, every school, all the things. Bring it to me. If I know of something, but I still feel comfortable with a recommendation, I try and bring it up. I'm just honest that way, but bring it to me. And I also will say that I'd also encourage you to ask the admissions person. They know what's being written, and see how they respond. I think that's important. How do they respond? Do they take it on head on and say, this was written by a student that was not a right fit, we didn't know about, blah, blah, blah. See what they say. There's two sides to every story. And if they're defensive or whatever, I mean, maybe that's telling, but I always encourage families, ask more questions. Don't let a review be the end all be all. I think it's important. It's an important component, but not the only component, if that makes sense.
Kolbie, as I mentioned in the beginning, cost of these places, I mean, they're very expensive. Most of them are very expensive. The cheap ones are $3 or $4 grand a month. Those are the cheap ones, right?
Right.
And so, you know, as families, you know, with health insurance, most health insurance has like a mental health hotline. And to where you can get like a referral list of various things. And, you know, not all of it's going to be covered by a therapeutic boarding school, but, you know, it's like the counseling side of things. And some of the costs can be defrayed by your group health insurance. So if a family were to come to you and they have a list, they've gone to their mental health people with their health insurance and they have this list, is that something that you can help work through? Because obviously if the cost is $8 grand a month and the insurance is going to cover $4 grand of it, that's a big difference. It might be a game changer for a family. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I won't say that I'm an insurance expert. I don't want to like give a disillusion to that. However, I work with families and their insurance all day, every day. What I will say is that I will always be really honest and say, these are the most appropriate options, whether or not it's on that list. These are the most appropriate. And I'm not going to be the one that takes something off because of my own thoughts, like it's too expensive. I want you to do the eliminating. And there's a couple of things that working with me, working with an ed consultant can really help. One is we can kind of help navigate the insurance. So if it is on that list, that's even better. But, you know, working with insurance, I've spoken with case managers before through your insurance. I've worked with programs to get those pre-approvals and kind of gauge out how much could we expect. Some of it just depends on the student. I also work with third-party insurance advocates. They're not affiliated to us, so I refer to them, and I kind of help you understand, like, there's different ways they bill or for their time. I help you understand what the heck that means and if it's worthwhile to do. And you know, because I work with so many families and I've built these relationships, I negotiate rates on your behalf pretty routinely. You know, these programs in schools will try to take you to dinners and they try to send you stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't want any of that. I like to cook my dinner every night out in my kitchen. Help my families out. I mean, help them out. This is ungodly expensive. They hear me say that a lot. And help them out. And is there anything you can do to kind of help with these expenses? It's crazy expensive. Now, parents will bring me their list from their insurance, and I will say, well, that's eating disorder specific. I don't think that's not appropriate. It's this specific. That's not appropriate. And really help families understand, you know, of that list, who might be appropriate that we might consider. And I'll also help you understand why that program wasn't on my recommendation, or if it was, and if there was some component, you know, they're not going to hit one of those 5 areas of wellness. What component's missing? I think education and knowledge is power when you're making these big decisions. And I'm always on the student and families team on their side, no matter what. And so I'm flexible in that way to make sure you, the families, know what and what's the most important. Did that answer your question? That was a lot.
Yes. So a lot of the facilities themselves have an insurance consultant. A lot of them have chosen to hire insurance consultants to get the max out of the insurance as possible. So that is in your favor, and that's not usually costly to you in that example.
Correct.
And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is don't lose sight of out of network too, because what I found in doing research is some of these places that are quote unquote out of network actually accept the in-network amount. So even though they truly are out of network, they're still working with you. So they're not necessarily off the list. You know, ask them how they treat out of networks. And so you'll be able to tell very quickly if they don't treat it well or not. But a lot of the good facilities have figured out that they need to treat out of network as in network,
Yes.
or they're not getting people. And so
Correct.
be aware of that. I mean, we're more on the insurance side. We're not, health insurance specialists and stuff, but we have a lot of knowledge on that kind of stuff. But there are
Totally.
definitely independent consultants out there that definitely work those angles.
Yes. So would you mind going back just really quickly? I want to make sure I hit this because I get this all the time from families. Why would I need a therapeutic and educational consultant? And I think that clearly I've listed a lot of things. I think, and I didn't put this first, not on purpose, but looking at this, first and foremost, our goal and my goal in this, I feel this very strongly, is it is an efficient use of your resources. Your resources are finite. Your time, your money, your energy, your emotions, or your emotional energy. How do we utilize all of those to get the, if you will, to use like a slang word, biggest bang for your buck? What is going to be the most effective time? Because what I hate to hear is families coming to me and they said, my kid's been to 6 different places. We spent all this money, we're tapping out, but they still are struggling. So how do we, really hone in on those resources? The other thing is you're having someone to be an unbiased opinion of the most appropriate options. We're able to guide and advise you and help you navigate through these really important, yet really, really, really challenging and difficult decisions. And, we have this extensive knowledge and expertise. I've already hit on this, typically it's our education, our previous professional experience, but we also spend a ton of time touring schools, programs, working on our professional relationship, networking with program leadership, and really, really emphasizing that individualized private case management. I can't tell you how many times I get a text in the middle of the night or on a holiday or on a weekend of family saying, uh-oh, what would you do in this circumstance? Or, uh-oh, things are not going well. Can you help? And so really having someone there that's really there to support and provide this knowledge and expertise. Okay. So going back to the beginning, we utilized the term kind of therapeutic boarding school, and that is certainly a type of program, but things that we might consider when we're exploring all the options: local day schools, gap years for those young adults, independent living programs for those young adults, academic schools with supportive therapeutic services, residential treatment, assessment and stabilization, or psychiatric hospital. So really it's this very wide range, this large spectrum that we can kind of navigate and hone in and become laser focused and targeted. That's meeting your child's needs, right? Again, not placing your child in a peg that doesn't fit their needs. It's really figuring out what's going to be the best for your child. Okay, so on to academic answers. I just want to share a little bit about us because I've been talking in general about an educational consultant. And so just to give you guys a little bit of background on us, Academic Answers is a comprehensive educational consulting firm. We are in our 25th year, started here in Austin, but we've kind of spread across the country. We're able to work in person, over the phone, virtually. Essentially have a family in every time zone, I think, right now. So, or US time zone, I guess I should say. And we've even had some international families. But I think what's really amazing about our firm and about us, and this is something I feel so strongly about, is we're this team, right? We are a full team approach. We're seasoned experts all in our kind of specialized domain. And so while I really focus on those school options, those therapeutic options, I've got team members, teammates, if you will, that college counselors that focus only on our young adults, that do tutoring and test prep, that do parent coaching. And so I can rely on them. I'm not trying to do everything, but we've really developed this robust team and this very experienced team. And we've developed it out of need, really, from our families that we've worked with, but really focusing in and having that specialization. I think I mentioned that a little earlier, is most consultants have kind of their little niche.
Kolbie, can we talk about, out of state? Because, I think it's just the same thing as, like, if you have a child with a disability, a lot of parents are pretty nervous about letting go and thinking about out of state school options, that, they're real nervous about that. Mm-hmm. And I would say that I spent a lot of time looking at Texas options, and I would say most states have better options than we have limited options in Texas. And I'm not like, they are very, very specific for who they are serving or whatever. And as big as Texas is, it was disappointing, the number
lack of diversity.
Options.
Lack of diversity. Yeah.
So yes, I would say it was disappointing, and I was looking at the whole giant state, right? And so, from my perspective, I did branch out, and it was scary, right? Like, to say I'm going to look at another state. But from the way I, looked at it, I'm near, Houston. So wherever you are, like, from my perspective, is like, okay, so what is it? If I needed to get there in a hurry, it's a 2 or 3 hour plane ride, right? If I had to. And quite honestly, if you can afford to put these people, your loved one in a place, you can probably afford a quick plane ticket if you needed to in a pinch, which I never needed to. But I'm just saying, like, I decided instead of thinking of how concerned I was that they stayed near me, of looking at the best option, and if that was out of state, being okay with that. And they do Zooms, and there's a lot of family involvement and things like that. So can you talk about that as well?
Yes, of course. It is excruciating, one, to be considering an out-of-home option, and two, I think one of the biggest hurdles I find is families struggling with the distance. And I think you hit the nail on the head, is sometimes it's a reframe of, I've got to consider what is the best option for my child, and kind of, rather than the distance, because I would much rather, as a consultant, or even like thinking about my own kid, I would much rather have my child in the best possible place, who's going to provide the best level of care for their needs, than the distance. Now, other things that I think of, and this is not, this is a little bit more of like the personal touches. Well, do you prefer Southwest or American? Do they fly to the closest airport? What does the commute or the logistics look like? What is the family involvement expectation? Does that align with your family? All of those different components, because it is such a big decision. Thinking of some of those more logistical pieces that are not the end all be all, but it is a consideration, is certainly, it's a big thing. And it's one of the things that parents bring to me the most. And Texas does have a lack of diversity, by the way, of just options, like different types of options.
I couldn't believe it. It was very frustrating.
It is frustrating.
Someone says, how is this service, Academic Answers, how could they help with a 22-year-old child for daycare programs, or help us understand where in Texas good programs we might find?
So a 22-year-old and an adolescent, an under 18-year-old, is similar in many ways. The biggest and number one difference is they are their own adult. They're their own adult. And so they ultimately, unless there is some sort of conservatorship or guardianship in place, those young adults have to make the choice. They don't have to be happy, like waving pom-poms, but they have to be okay with whatever the option is. And that's really uncomfortable. And it's really uncomfortable for parents as well when they really don't want to go. But the process is the same, is really evaluating what do they need, and then where is the most appropriate option. I typically encourage the student, the young adult, to be more involved. I think it tends to go a bit smoother. They're not as surprised. But that's not the case for every family. Some families and the parent, I'm typically working primarily with the parents, and we put together solutions, and then they utilize, their relationship and or a therapist who has that good relationship. Sometimes I don't ever even work with the young adult, but I do put the information so you know what's really out there. I hope that answered that question.
Can you work with families who have a child under guardianship? And I know this is true for higher education, for as far as college programs and stuff. Some will take them under a guardianship and some won't. And that is a definitive question on the list, that if you have someone under guardianship, you need to find out if they are capable of doing that. And so you can help with somebody who does have their loved one under a guardianship.
Yes, I can. I've worked with families under a guardianship, under conservatorship. I'm obviously not the one helping procure that, but I do help families explore that option in some circumstances. So yes, I can, and we can help navigate if we're considering options, if they're willing and able to work with that as well.
And the conservatorship is a term that's generally used in other states, and we use the term guardianship here, but it is a similar term in other states, so you can definitely help with that. Well, Kolbie, the question always comes up. This sounds great, and I need help, and I would love to hire you, but how much do you cost? I mean, can you give us a range of, like, if a family wanted to hire someone like yourself, can you give us an example of what they could expect to pay to hire professional services to find what they need?
Yes. So the very first thing that a family can expect from us is, most families reach out to us. We're not calling anybody. They reach out and say, we need help. You're likely going to talk with me. Honestly, you'll get me most likely. And the very first thing that I'm going to want to do is schedule an initial consultation. It's the very first piece. And if you work in a hospital setting or anything, you know what triage is. So that's kind of how I view it, is we're going to triage in this meeting. It's an 1.5-hour meeting. We can do it in person, over the phone, virtually. I do love to see everybody's face, but we can do it a phone call if I need to. It's an 1.5 hours, and that cost is $300. I typically ask you to send IEPs or testing that I can take a peek at before. And then this is where I really get to know the family. I really get to hear more information about what's going on and what we're looking for. And then I help do some matchmaking even within our firm. Am I the one to help? Is one of our parent coaches the ones to help get you connected to them, or a college planner, or whatever that might look like, and get you paired up? All of our services are typically for periods of time. So we like to be with you for the long haul, whether it's our college planning or it's our parent coaching. We have, a period of time at a flat rate. And I say that vaguely because each one just kind of depends on where we're going. And then I don't want to bore us with like numbers and time frames. I'm really, really direct in those initial meetings. So every family can expect, I need an initial meeting. I like to say I usually can make time, if the family can make it, to meet with the family within 2 business days, maybe sooner. I try and be very available for that. So
that's really good, because when we need you, we need you like yesterday. We don't need to be talking to you 4 weeks from now. We needed you like a week ago already.
A week ago, right? And I've been known to like move things and do things on the weekends, and I've done a meeting on Christmas Day. Like, things happen. If I have the luxury, I try to keep it it happens.
Crisis is crisis. That's all there is to it. And
Totally.
that time really, really, really
It's
matters.
precious.
So,
It
well,
does.
thank you for, providing your information. So everybody today is going to get a copy of today's slides. We've got her website here, her phone number, so you can reach out to Kolbie
Yep,
directly.
anytime.
And, first, again, I guess I would just like to say is I personally am sorry that you're here. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you learned today. Everybody that joined us today, I'm glad that you learned. But I'm sorry if you're here because you guys, the struggle is real and things are really, not going as well as you had hoped. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is help out there. And I think the thing is, our kids and their brains, they're still forming till age 26. And so getting them those critical skills that they need to navigate some of these rough waters. And at a lot of our kids, I always say that, we have TTB, we have typical teenage behavior on steroids with mental health challenges or, some of the comorbid diagnoses and things like that. So the struggle truly is real. And, our heart goes out to you for sure. Someone asked if we're going to be giving any CEUs today. Consolidated Planning Group does not give CEUs at this time. Kolbie, does Academic Answers?
We don't, unfortunately.
Okay,
no,
so
sorry.
a lot of the talks that we have don't. So these are things that we always tell you to just keep on your radar as it relates to planning for special needs, guys. We have webinars on every single one of these topics, and all of these things. We have a loved one with a disability, may be things that we need to be thinking about. All of our past webinars do live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, where you can subscribe for free. We also have a podcast for people that want to listen to these things on the way to work if you have a commute. And so in the slides today, you're going to get a link. If you're listening by podcast, then you can email us and we'll be happy to send you a link to the slides, and that's at contact for cpgcares.net. But in the link to the slides, there's going to be a link for all of the upcoming webinars that we have. And as always, we work on a collaborative team here at CPG, so we always like people to be able to put faces with members of our team. And we also do provide a free comprehensive consultation for anybody that has matters that they want to talk with and go kind of deeper and wider on these things. Definitely reach out. You can just hold your camera over this QR code, and it'll take you to a calendar where you can schedule an initial consultation directly with us at a time that works for you. So as always, it's my pleasure to be here. And what a great topic. I wish there was so many more of these things. There's so many families out there that are struggling, and they're struggling in secret because it's like this taboo thing that we're not supposed to talk about.
Right.
When we have, loved ones with mental illness or mental challenges and things like that. It's like, who do you talk to? And you only kind of want to talk to people who understand, because most people don't get it unless they're dealing with it. And so I hope that as we grow our webinar series, that we'll have more talks on these type of topics, because the truth is the help is not right there in front of you. I mean, even when we have like an admission, when you have a child that has been admitted to a psych hospital, and they come out, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's 2 weeks later, maybe it's 3 days later.
Right.
And you don't know where to go. They're on all these new drugs. Maybe you don't even have a psychiatrist yet that can continue the drugs that they give you a supply of 3 days for. There's some real issues out there. So the struggle is real, and getting the help that you need and finding that good fit. And I would say, when we think about the cost, obviously nobody wants to drop this kind of money, right? When we think about it, but is it life and death? Could it be life and death for this kid? Could it be the difference of success or failure for this kid? And a lot of the families that we serve and things that we've seen is the answer is yes. And if you're at that point, that's really when you need to start reaching out and finding a consultant. If you've got this and you've got it all figured out and you know where they're going to go and how they're going to get there and all these other things, then great. But if you find it pretty difficult to navigate like this ridiculous list that your insurance company gives you, definitely hire a consultant for sure. So thanks so much, everyone. It's certainly been a pleasure, and you guys can look out for the email with the slides and the recording, and we'll look forward to connecting with you again soon, Kolbie. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.